Hi everyone, this is Ida of Created to Create. Welcome back to my channel. If you are not 18 years or older, this video content is not intended for you. I have I had a question from my last video from one of my friends that I shared the adorable scoreboard from that I picked up at Craft Stash. And she wanted to know if there was instructions on the handbook on how to make a box for Slimline cards. And there is instructions on how to make a card, but they only give you an example. So I asked her what the dimensions were, the width, the length, and how deep she wanted the box to be, so I could help her out with that. And if you guys make slimline cards, this will help you out as well. Now, I will repost the affiliate links to the scoreboard and the handbook. I really like this scoreboard and I love the handbook, but the scoreboard for me, because I do create a lot of boxes, really helps me as far as not having to think too much when I'm creating a box. I will explain to you how I created a box before and why I'm doing why I do what I do, or why do I add an inch here, or why do I add a half an inch there. I think that when you're explaining something, for me at least, I need to know why I need to do that. Not because I'm being smart or sarcastic, but that's the way I can understand the concept of making the box. So hopefully I'm going to explain it to you correctly. Now, she told me, I asked her for the dimensions, and she said that the one that she makes the most is the traditional slimline cards for us here in the US. And so she said they were 3 5/8 inches wide by 8 5/8 inches tall. So I never make a box that the card fits exact. I always give it at least 1/8 of an inch, if not 1/4 of an inch, because I want to have some wiggle room if I added foliage or a rose or something that's sticking out to the sides. So I gave this 1/8 of an inch in the width and the length when I cut my papers. So this is what I do. So I figured out by giving it 1/8 of an inch, the measurements went from 3 5/8 to 3 3/4. So now it's just that 1/8 of an inch more. So the paper size that you need for that size card is going to be a 3 3/8 by 8 3/4. And that is going to give you a half an inch depth. For if you add dimensional flowers or dimensional layers, you need room in that box to be able to put your card in and not smash your flowers or whatever you added. So to the 3 3/4 by 8 3/4, if I were to cut this just that size, I wouldn't have any room to go up on the sides, on the bottom and the top, and on the sides on my box. So it's just a flat piece of paper. So I have to add, and I'm just going to use a couple of scraps I have here. Well, maybe these will be better. So if I wanted to have sides on my box and I wanted it to be half an inch deep, I would have to add a half an inch here, a half an inch here at the bottom. I hope you can see that. A half an inch on the top. And then I would need a half an inch here and a half an inch here. The whole length of the card. So that's why you add that extra when you're cutting to make your box, because you have to add that to accommodate what you're going to fold up to shape your card. So if I want this to be a half an inch deep to that 3 3/4 by 8, and let's go slow. For the 3 3/4, I want a half an inch. I need a half an inch here and a half an inch here. So that's 1 more inch. So to the 3 3/4, I'm going to add an inch, which makes it 4 3/4. To the long length, to the longest point, I have to do the same. it measures, I want the bottom of my box to be 8 3/4, but then I need a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch here. So a 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch is an inch. So we're to the 8 3/4, we're going to add an inch, which gives us 9 3/4. So that's why and how I figure out what I need on the sides to make my box. So if you want to accommodate a 3 5/8 by 8 5/8 slimline card, you have to start with a piece of paper that measures 4 3/4 wide by 8 3/4 long. Now I'm going to take out the scoreboard and we're going to score this. And because this scoreboard has the side where you do your lid and the side where you do your box, I don't have to worry about reducing my score line an 1/8 of an inch, because when I put my paper into that little lip that's right here, that's going to accommodate for that 1/8 of an inch that I needed to take out so the lid would fit properly. So I did make one, and I was a little off in, I don't know if in my cutting or my scoring, so I went ahead and made more. So the papers are exact same size for the lid. You're going to need 2 of them. One's going to be the lid and one's going to be the box. So let's start off with the lid. Because we want our lid to be a 1/2 inch deep, we're going to score all the way around our box just at 1/2 inch. And make sure, whoops, this is really thick cardstock, so make sure that you stay within, I should have used something thinner for, at least for this, but I wanted to, this is 120 pound. So sometimes the thicker the paper, the more chance you have of coming out of these grooves, because the paper is so thick. So be careful with that. Now I'm going to turn it this way, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to score it at 1/2 inch. And hopefully I'll stay within that groove. And I'm going to do it a couple of times because this paper is super thick. I'm going to give it a 1/4 turn again. And I'm going to do the same thing at a 1/2 inch. See how it wants to move? Because one is really, really thick, and it's there. See, I went to the side again. I'm going to angle my scoreboard, guys, because that makes it easier for me. But I am scoring at 1/2 inch, and hopefully that will help me stay straight. Yes. So there. Now I'm going to rotate it one more time. Make sure I butt it up to the corner. And again, I'm going to score. This paper's really thick. It was a bad choice. Bad girl. See how it moves? Because I'm applying pressure because it's so thick. Okay. So I scored it all the way around. Hopefully my score lines are straight. They look to be straight. Now I'm going to set it aside. I'm going to get my second piece. And this is going to be the base or the bottom of the box, or the box part. This, I'm going to move it all the way to the edge. And it's got a little wedge right here, a little lip that the paper goes underneath. You want to make sure it doesn't shift from there, and you're going to score it at 1/2 inch. So here's the 12, and there's the 11. The mark in the center is the 1/2 inch. So that's where I'm going to score. I don't have to think that I have to remove 1/8 of an inch or change my score line, because when I butt it up against that little lip, that gives me, reduces it so that the lid is a little bit bigger. I'm going to give it a 1/4 turn, butt it all the way up into that little lip, and score again at 1/2 inch, or in this case it would be the 11.5 inch mark. I'm going to rotate again, and I'm going to repeat it at the 1/2 inch mark. I'm going to score. And I'm going to do the same thing again, making sure each time that I rotate it and I position my paper, it's under that lip. 1/2 inch. I'm at the 11.5 inch mark. That gives me just a 1/2 inch score line. So we're done with this, with the scoreboard. I didn't have to cut my paper bigger or move my score line to make my box part smaller than my lid so they would fit because of the scoreboard. I think this is a game changer, or for me, gives me one less thing to think about because I'm trying to learn new things right now, and it's just a lot. How do you know which one is your lid and which one is your box? When you look at your score lines, your lid is always going to look smaller than your box, because the lid, you scored it on the left side, and the box, you scored it on the right. The deeper section you have here, that's your bottom. So let's go ahead and cut that and glue it together. I'm one of those people that I cut on this end and then I go directly opposite to cut. I know some people just keep rotating and cutting, and I will cut up right to that first score line. I stop there, and then I go at an angle and take out just a little wedge, not just from there, but also from the other side. See right there? I'm going to take off just that little bit. That's all you need. So I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to take that off, and I do not cut past the score lines. Now I'm going to directly across. I'm going to do the same thing, just up until that score line. Take that little wedge out there and the little wedge there. Same thing on this side. Now there's two ways to do this. The lid can be attached to your base. I'm not going to do it that way, but I will explain to you how to do it that way if you want it that way. Also, if you wanted to add like a aperture, and an aperture is just an opening or a hole or a cut in your box. That's all that aperture means. I'm a simple woman, and it's just an opening on the box. And right now would be where you would put your die on here. You would get one of those that don't cut the edge, they just cut what's inside, and that's how you can get a beautiful opening on your box. And then after you do that, you would of course line your acetate, but you would line it. I personally do it on the, if I do it on the top, I add another layer on top. So if you are going to do a box and you're going to open a lid and you're going to do an aperture, line up not just your box, but your layering piece where it's going to go. You don't have to glue it on. Just line it up, put your die on top, run it through the machine. What that does, it doesn't fully cut everything, but it gives you an indentation so you can reline your die and remove one of those layers and run your die again with your box or whatever didn't cut through and get a clean cut in the exact same spot. So that's how you do that. Now I'm going to cut my lid, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to cut up right to the score line. I'm going to angle and take off those pieces. That way I can, this one's hard to see. That way I don't have anything interfering. If you don't cut these tabs off, sometimes when you go to glue your box, they kind of stick out further than your box, and you don't want that. So I'm going to cut here, cut in at an angle on both sides, just up to the score line, not past the score line, just up to it. It's hard to see. Do the same thing here. I need it bigger than that. So there's that, and now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So we've cut, that's all the cuts we need. We don't even need the scissors anymore. So let's put the box together. Just go ahead and fold it in. This is very heavy, heavy cardstock. I will see if this is still available, and I will link it. But be warned that it's very heavy, and I don't normally use this to cut any of my die cuts because I have to run it several times because it's so thick. And I don't like to put that kind of wear and tear on my dies. So you can, at this point, you can use hot glue, or you can use wet glue, or you can use tape. I personally like wet glue. I think it lasts longer. It's unlikely that it comes apart, versus if you add tape with the heat right now, it can come apart. Also with hot glue, if it gets real hot, it's going to soften and it's going to come undone. But the wet glue, when it dries, it dries. It's not going to soften back up or anything like that because of the heat. And all I'm doing is lining up my box at the very corners. And we should get a really good fit here, guys, because I tried to be a little bit more careful when I was scoring and cutting versus my first one. My first one I really messed up and didn't realize it until afterwards. Transferring some glue over to the other side. Again, I'm lining up those corners, making sure it's flush. So there's that one. One more to go. And it was really simple with the scoreboard because I didn't have to think about, I need to change the score line because my box has to be a little bit smaller, or because my lid has to be a little bit bigger. I cut both papers the same, scored at the same half-inch mark, but I put them on different sides of my board. That made it, gave me that accommodation for that piece I had to take off. So here is my base. Now we're going to glue this one. We're going to do the same thing. I will link this glue in the description box. This works very well for me. Any links that I put on here will be affiliate links, which means I will make if you were to purchase things using those links, then I make a small commission. And but that glue is the one that I use because I know there's some glue out there that's really expensive, and this has worked for me for years. I've never had any trouble with it. The only thing is, they used to make it where it came with this cap where you would stand your glue up like that. They don't make it like that anymore. You just get the glue bottle. But if you have something that you like to use and you keep refilling, this glue is a very good glue. And then you see that it's a quick grab. It doesn't take a long time for it to hold on to the papers when I glue them together. So again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just gluing the tab inside flush. You don't want for them to be extended further or too far in, because then it's not going to fit your box. It will either be too loose or it will be too tight. So make sure that that's flush. Now at this point, before I would glue the tabs on my box, that's when I would, do the opening if I wanted to put a piece of acetate on my box. Sometimes I like to add that acetate so I don't have to decorate too much the outside of the box, because the card inside is so beautiful. And you put a window in there, well, they can see right through what's in the box. And normally, those cards are beautiful. So you don't have to do too much to the outside of the box. And the last tab. Like, this is super simple, guys. And the reason I explained to you how I get my measurements is because I'm giving you the measurements for this box. But let's say you wanted to make a box that was a different size. Well, by me trying to break it down for you, I'm hoping that explains things to you that when you need to make a card that's a different size, you know how to figure it out. So here is the lid, and let's try it. Perfect fit. There you go, guys. The box fit perfectly. If I noticed that this one I cut it correctly, not like my other one. I'm going to show you the other one. Yeah, so it fits perfectly. Now if I wanted this box, this lid, to be attached to the box, I would have left one of the long sides open, and I would have cut off those little tabs, and instead I would have glued this to the outside of my box. I would have glued it right here, that tab. My box would have been attached and it would have opened like that. So that's another option on how to do that, but this is perfect. What I like about this is my friend, she has, you know, like a business where she sells her cards, and she can have these boxes made up and store them flat, and they're good to go whenever she creates. She can do them in all colors. They store flat and she has them ready. All she has to do is, you know, decorate or cut an opening into them, or whatever she decides to do. Now I'm going to show you my first one. What did I do with it? I'm going to turn it upside down because that's where you're going to see it. See how the opening here is wider than the opening here. Either I scored it the wrong place or I didn't cut my paper straight. So you have to make sure. So this is actually fits perfect at this end, but at this end it's too wide. The opening's too wide because, like I said, I either cut it wrong, crooked, or when I was doing the score, maybe it shifted and I scored in the wrong area. So be careful when you're doing that. And this one, see, it's the same everywhere. Also, the lid is not going to be all the way to the bottom. And that's a good thing. And I'm going to tell you why. Because it gives you room to actually open it up. Versus if one was inside the other, it would be a little bit more difficult to open. But that's how you use the scoreboard to make any size box. Just remember that you have to give yourself a little room, a little wiggle room for your card, and to that you're going to add your 1/2 inch all the way around your box. So for each side it's going to be 1/2 inch. You have 4 sides, so you're going to have to add a 1/2 inch for each one of those sides. Thanks for watching. I hope everyone is having a great day. Jackie, I hope this is what you wanted, and I hope that this helps you. Bye.